We are Masters Radio, an online music community finding ways to enjoy and support the master artists who created the soundtracks to our lives. We can show that musicians on our platform will benefit from increased exposure, engagement, healthcare, and other benefits, fundraising, and growth opportunities that empower them to thrive. Today, we're thrilled to sit down with Rockabilly guitar player and harmonica player Jamie James, founder of the Kingbees, a longtime collaborator with the late Harry Dean Stanton and Dennis Quaid and the Sharks, now celebrating his solo debut record, Straight Up, the cover of which you see behind him. Over a career spanning 4 decades, Jamie has distilled the essence of rock, blues, and twang into a sound all his own. We'll explore the philosophy behind his pop blues, the stories that shaped the songwriting in his 70s now, and not the 70s, his 70s, and the lessons that he's learned running his own label. Jamie, thank you for being here. Your creativity and resilience have inspired generations of fans, me among them. You've described the blues not just as a genre, but as a universal state of mind that underpins so much music. How do you articulate that philosophy when you're, say, writing a new song? Or
By the way, thank you for having me, Adam. And first off, before we get started, is this also visual or is this just audio?
it's a visual. Yep, this video.
Okay. Do I look okay? I got to make sure. No,
Hair and makeup are fine, sir. Yes, absolutely.
once you're over 70, really, you don't really care too much about that. But no, that's a very good question. It's and just in simple to describe it in like a simple breakdown. First and foremost, I would say it's emotional. It's about emotions. It's about simplicity. And those emotions, whether you're celebrating, there could be up tempo, a blues, but that's going to be simple, and it's going to be with feeling, emotion. Blues, it's from the heart. It is not cerebral music. It is not that cerebral music doesn't have feeling. It does, of course it does. But this is without the gray matter, as Hercule Poirot would say. This is more, and then I think most of all, I would say really the blues is for everyone. Everyone has highs and lows and ups and downs, and I think it's something that everyone can relate to. Really, it's universal in that sense, truly. Whereas certain music, the way we define it now in our culture is, like country is for this group of people and rockabilly is for that group of people, or rock and roll is for that, or classicals for that. I think the blues and what the blues means, whether it's rock and roll or what, because it's all comes from the blues. I think it really is for everyone.
I would have to agree. And on the sort of on the theme of simplicity, many artists today lean heavily on Pro Tools and digital editing, but you chose in recording straight up an old school approach. How do you balance the warmth, the imperfections, if you will, of analog recording methods with the practical advantages of modern technology?
It's the only thing that I really know, to tell you the truth. We went in, Tom Walsh, the drummer, and Tom Mencius, the bass player, Ken Stange, the keyboard. But while Ken was on the road at that time, that day with Paul Anka, so there was just the three of us, and we went into that little studio downtown, Robot Kitten, and we set up live. We'd rehearsed a couple of times, and we'd been playing together for a long time, the three of us, for many, many years with Dennis Quaid and the Sharks. And so we were kind of like a tight unit. And we went in, the guys learned my songs, and we went in and we just recorded this album in one afternoon. It was just one, and then I went back in and just redid a couple of harmonica parts because I couldn't get the tone I wanted on the rack. But those are the live vocals from that afternoon. Those are, everything is live. And that's what we know how to do, set up and play. Whether it's on a stage or in a studio or upside down spitting nickels, as my mom used to say, it's that's all we know how to do. That's because that's the era I grew up in. You just set up, you plug in, and you play.
Absolutely true, and it conveys in the sound. As a harmonica player myself, I understand about not being able to get the right tone out of the rack. You got to be able
Right.
to really
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
position in there because it's an
Yes.
air-driven instrument.
Yes.
It really does matter to be able to do that. But again, keeping it really simple makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned, timeless and the way you grew up. On Straight Up, there's a track, Septuagenarian Blues. Wearing your age as a badge of honor. How was your
Yes.
perspective, both musically and philosophically, I guess, influenced, the themes and storytelling on this record?
I have to say that a lot of it has to do with that this unwavering, unchangeable, enduring love for music, and especially for playing guitar. And but what just music, like I guess I was just like born with an ear that music appealed to me. It was always playing in the background. My mother always had the radio on in the refrigerator. There was always music, and that's just how I grew up. And music, it can change my mood like that. And so that's it. It's just really about the love for music. That's the only thing that I can say is consistent. Is nothing can change the love. A bad business deal or tough breaks or any of those kind of things that you bumps in the road that you hit in a career as a musician. It cannot. For me, it doesn't. That your love for music is, it got this kind of armor around it that is not going to be penetrated by those kinds of things. It stays intact.
Yeah, certainly that clearly a durable soul in the blues realm, just judging by your age. But life events happen, as I understand it. You had recovered from open heart surgery around the time, shortly before Straight Up was being written. Do those dents in the road, have an impact on you musically?
100%. It's like, you're looking out your window and you realized you haven't cleaned your window since 1984. And so you pull out some Windex and and a rag, and you clean your window and you go, oh my gosh, it's the same view out there, but now you're seeing it like through a nice clean window. Well, that kind of brush with death for me, it kind of cleaned, it focused, it brought me back to a clearer vision of my love and my dream, and songwriting and creativity, because that's my first love is songwriting. Playing the guitar and songwriting go hand in hand with me. And I started writing songs when I was I got my first electric guitar in 1966, and I wrote my first song that year. And so it kind of cleared away all the other fog, all the other, distractions, and I was able to lie there realizing, I need to get right back to the root, and be clear about, where I put my energy, and that's kind of what my experience.
Yeah, it's a time, obviously these things pop up. One of the things I'm going to ask you about is how rockabilly and sort of this genre of blues, the sort of upbeat, simple blues, every now and then seems to cycle back into the forefront. In the 80s, there was the Stray Cats came out, sort of kicked it in the ass again after I had the pleasure of playing in something around here called the Seton Gatton Band. Danny Gatton, legendary guitar player, no longer with us, but Gatton was on the Robert Gordon album. It was the kind of the rockabilly kick in the early part of the 80s. Stray Cats a little bit later on. Brian Setzer, speaking of also getting over some health challenges now, he's doing much better, but he did an album just a couple years ago. Um, what do you think is making this kind of music every now and then rise to the top and then somehow just sort of fall out of attention again?
Well, for me, now it wasn't about a genre driven thing for me. For me as a guitar player in 1970, late in 77, and early in 78, I just became kind of burnt out on playing. I was playing an old 1960 Les Paul, beautiful sunburst through a Marshall stack, and cranking, and I'd been playing kind of that kind of guitar for since about 1970 and 1969, so like for maybe, what is that, 7 8 years. And for me, I just finally woke up and said, I was just like, not fed up, but I was burnt out on. So I wanted to change my perspective and my style of playing. And I had a 57 Fender Stratocaster at the time as well. And I remember thinking, instead of playing single note leads all the time, I'm going to try doing double string leads, not just one string, but two strings. So all my leads now have to have two strings. And then simultaneously, oddly enough, um, that this cat that was a mime. I had an apartment in Hollywood, and this cat that he was a mime on Hollywood Boulevard by Groman's Chinese Theater went by the name Eggman. And sometimes I'd walk down there and I lived behind the Groman's Chinese Theater in this apartment building, and I'd go down there and get a bowl of soup or whatever at the Hamburger Hamlet. And one day we started talking, and I don't know. We got onto the subject, and he said, are you familiar with Buddy Holly?" And I said, "Of course. I mean, I knew Peggy Sue and Maybe Baby." But anyway, a few days later, he handed me a cassette tape with every Buddy Holly song on it, and I listened to it, and right away I could hear that Fender tone on the guitar, and I love the fact that he did all his solos in those songs were like triads and two notes and three notes and so I sat up and learned those for like 2 days straight, every single Buddy Holly song. And I modeled the Kingbees after and my guitar playing. Now it became, I think it later became attached to the name Rockabilly, but I didn't have any name attached to it at the time. It was just as a guitar player seeking like a different style of playing and a different challenge.
Yeah, what a great story. Yeah, how you got inspired by that, and that's time. That music is timeless.
Yes, it
You know,
is.
it's that tone is timeless. I mean, how many people are still to this day using that kind of a tone? It may not be any longer with a 57 Strat. It probably isn't with a Marshall. It's with a modeler now, but still, that really developed a sound that guitar
Yes.
players, many of whom I've interviewed on here, that are half your age and less. Well, none of them are less than half your age, but have really, really embraced. It's we had Mark Volalenga, we got Joel Hoekstra on. These are fantastic guitar players in their own right, and yet they're getting their inspiration is the same thing inspired you.
Yes.
It's that sound from way back then. Imagine what do you think would happen had the plane not gone down and Buddy Holly made it into, another decade of writing music?
That's I asked myself that question, not exactly, but this is the question I asked myself. If Jimi Hendrix were to walk the earth for 5 more minutes, what would he do?
Yeah.
Would he pick up a guitar and play it? Or would he sit down to, a meal or a beautiful woman? And every time for me, the answer is always the same. He'd pick up a guitar and play it. And so I have to believe the same with Buddy Holly. There's certain guitar players that I have to say, and now, and of course, it's a big loss to the guitar playing world when we lost the wizard of all time, Jeff Beck.
Yeah.
And you got to think, and because I think that if I were to be able to have 5 more minutes at some point in time, I would want to pick up a guitar and play it because I still play every day. I've already played this morning for over half an hour. I play every day. It's the same to me as breathing or hydrating. It's just something I love to do. It's not about going out to make money or to show off or all that. It's just I love to play the guitar. It makes me feel connected and alive, and I do it every day. And when I can't do it, like when I had my quadruple bypass, the open heart surgery you referred to, I wasn't able to pick up a guitar for several weeks, and that was. And I remember sometimes I'd fall asleep and I'd have these nightmares of, oh my God, I forgot how to play. But man, when I picked it up again, it was just immediate. It was just a combustible energy between me and the guitar, and that's when I started writing all these new songs. Actually,
Yeah, that's what I had read is that was an inspiration for you. Yeah, the muscle memory takes over, and your brain doesn't even realize that you still know it. You still have it.
yes, yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
we could dream about Jimi Hendrix being still alive, and Buddy Holly as well. On the subject of dream collaborations, you worked alongside the late Harry Dean Stanton, we mentioned at the top of the show, Dennis Quaid. Both of them were actually actors before they were musicians. Sorry, musicians before they were actors. And
correct.
so, I mean, tell us a little bit about that, but also if there was another living legend or artist that you'd like to play with, who would that be?
Well, and by the way, I didn't quite finish your last question of what would Buddy Holly be doing today.
Sure.
I'm pretty sure as a guitar player, he'd first off seek out a 57 or a 56 Fender Stratocaster. He'd seek out a 410, 58 or 59 Fender Bassman amplifier, a drummer that can swing and a bass player that can thump. And I'm pretty sure he'd want to light it up, and that's because it's one thing to play alone, but it's another thing to collaborate. And as you know, that energy is second to none. When it's fired up, when the things are rocking, and I as far as like who would I collaborate with, that's I mean there's many different people. I would love to just sit. I would love to have been a fly on the wall, for example, on any of the first Jimi Hendrix Experience album sessions. I would love to be sitting there like just like in the corner and just watch them, like just watch Mitch Mitchell play the drums the way he does, and the way it all came together, and that I would love that, I mean, there's so many. I would love to sit down with Antonio Carlos Jobim, to me, another pure genius. I would love to just sit, you know I don't think I'd ever want to pick up an instrument around Jimi Hendrix or Antonio Carlos Jobim. I would be embarrassed to do that, but I would love to sit there and be next to it, that energy.
As great players as they are, I've heard the album, Jamie, and you have nothing to be ashamed of.
Well,
So,
thank you.
you definitely got the chops. However, you did make a point on this record compared to some of the other work you've done in the past that really you're going to let the harmonica do the talking as far as solos go. And I think you ended up as a result. Now, I'm biased. I'm a harmonica player 50 years on. Um, I think the harmonica's got a bit of an edge over the guitar and solos in terms of feeling.
Yes.
Technical proficiency, okay, I get that. And certainly guitar is way more versatile an instrument, but I would say that there's something about you said before that this kind of music is not cerebral, and it isn't. That's not to denigrate music that is, but just the idea that this is music that gets you here, not here. And
Yes.
I just think the harmonica, it's a wind-driven instrument. You play it through your mouth, it's your native communication system anyway. That the muse that goes into it is the breath of God. It is that feeling an instrument. Is that something similar to what you had in mind when you planned to just do harmonica for the solos?
Well, it's funny. That's it. That you think of the voice and you think of speaking and you think of singing, and I've always loved the harmonica because you brought up my dear friend, and I miss him every day, Harry Dean Stanton. And Harry Dean played old school melodic harmonica mostly, and he'd been playing for many decades. He was born in 1926, and so he started playing harmonica as a youngster in Kentucky, and he played it upside down and turned around. He played it backward, like he turned it, so
Mhm.
his high notes were on the left side. And but listening to him play all the time, and he could pick up a melody just like that, the same as if I sit down with a guitar, I can pick up a chord structure like that. And and I always loved it. I always loved the way it sounded and the way what it added to a song, because it was almost like another voice. And so now, and I had never played much harmonica, but after my heart surgery in 2020, and then COVID hit and the lockdown, I decided, Harry Dean, I had a few of his harmonicas here, so I decided to just start blowing. And I literally just, went into YouTube and looked at tutorials, and I started playing. I started playing all day long. I got a rack, and I had one of Harry's old racks, and I put it on my neck, and and I don't know. I just started doing it like every day, and just every day, because you couldn't go anywhere, and it's just because I'm not proficient enough as a harmonica player to call myself a harmonica player like you are, but I was playing the harmonica to the songs that I was writing. They were a part of the guitar and the melody and the lyrics. Like it all fit together. I would never go and just play a harmonica like you could probably sit in with anybody. I would never dare to somebody say, "Hey, you want to play harmonica in this song?" I would never do that. But but with my songs, what I'm doing, because these were parts that came to me while I was playing the songs, you know. And so that's a different kind of approach, I think, you know.
As
But
a,
I
yeah, and as a songwriter, you've got a disciplined music mind, and so once you learn what the instrument can do, you certainly have.
yes.
I appreciate the kind words, and I'll share a story with you about a celebrity I played with. If somebody just came up in a Facebook group I'm part of, what celebrity you played with. I was 19 years old, and because I was in the student union group that brought musicians in to play at my school, I got my band in to play early in the morning for a show that Muddy Waters headlined.
Wow.
In the middle of his show, or actually toward the end, he had all the other musicians who wanted to come up and sit in and jam with him. And so I am scared absolutely crapless, 5 feet of Monica next to Muddy Waters. So
Beautiful.
yeah, but again, I've listened to the album. Do not sell
Beautiful.
yourself part player. You're quite
Memorable, man. And that's Muddy Waters right there. I mean, listen, you know, you talk about people that if they could come back to life. I mean, I'd go back. I mean, you know, I would do anything to sit next to Charlie Patton or Robert Johnson or Bucka White or, you know, I mean, there's so many decades, kind of T-Bone Walker, you know, Chuck Berry. I mean, so come on. I mean, the list is endless, you know.
yeah.
But when you're doing an interview like this, you can only think of what's off the top of your head. But no, and for you to sit there and even share a stage beyond the bandstand at the same time as the late great Muddy Waters, please,
It,
man.
he's a class act. A few years later, I saw him on his 65th birthday playing the big arena outside of Washington, D.C., opening for Eric Clapton.
Yeah.
And it was probably a staged thing. I don't know. But after Muddy's set finished, it was dark for a long time. Clapton walks out with one spotlight on him only and says, I just can't follow that, and walks off the stage. And then out comes Muddy and some of his band with Clapton. And they went through a song together. I don't know, Red House or something. So,
You're kidding. He said, I can't follow. I just can't follow. Wow.
frankly, he was right. But yeah. but, he's a great player, no question about it. But touring wise, depending on what band he was with, they were, it was not a bad show by any means. But Muddy Waters
Yeah.
opening up for
Yeah.
him,
Yeah. Yeah.
so on
Yeah.
his
That's right.
65th birthday, you know. So yeah, it was he was a class act. So many of these artists were tremendously influential, and so many of them are caring guys like that. I think I read somewhere that there's benefit concerts or some causes that you care about. Did I read that right?
Well, not. I mean, I care about a lot of causes, but no, I haven't.
Okay,
You know, I mean, with Dennis, we used to do a lot of benefits, a
maybe that
lot
was
of
it.
benefit. Yeah.
It makes sense. We like to support that. The thing's cool about our artists. Masters Radio only plays music that is new music. We don't play any of the old catalog. We play the new music from people like you who were first popular more than 20 years ago. So, for
Yeah.
example, Taylor Swift's never on Masters Radio. She doesn't
Yeah.
qualify till next year. But they're all of an age now. Not all of them are as old as me or you, but a lot of them are getting up there. Where there's more to life that they've had the opportunity to experience, there's more to life that they care about. When you're in your 20s playing guitar for a living, all you care about is are you going to be able to stay in your house? Are you going to be able to get a meal on the table?
That's
Right?
right. That's right. No, and I mean, I mean, the American Heart Association is probably the top of my list. Operation Smile,
Mm-hmm.
that's another, you know, and then also, you know, individual things. I remember when Katrina happened, you know, with Dennis, because he had spent a lot of time in New Orleans doing a couple of movies, and it was close to his heart. The bankings, the whole thing. And so we went and did some shows to actually raise cash for doctors, you know, to raise cash money, you know, but yeah, you know, I mean, wherever you can help as a musician, you know, I started playing in '66, you know, and Vietnam was happening, and guys my age were being sent over there, and I remember I remember very clearly after having a conversation that with this cat that had come back from Vietnam, and I remember thinking, I don't ever want to carry a gun into any neighborhood on this earth. I'd rather carry a guitar. Any neighborhood that I go to, wherever it may be, I want to have a guitar in my hands and not a gun. And that was it for me. I just made up my mind there. I was gonna put a guitar in my hands and never a weapon,
And seeing it as you are as old as you are, that strategy clearly worked.
Yes. Yeah, well, it's getting there.
Apart from that little bit of wisdom, what else might you share with somebody just starting out, a young guitar player who wants to make his mark as you have, find great players to play with, find great outlets for his songs? What would you share with them? You also want to label, so maybe you've got a good perspective on that.
You know, when I think about that sometimes, and I think about some of the pearls of wisdom that were imparted to me, and I can only share some of the wisdom that was imparted to me. A couple of them, one of them was kind of some lessons are painful. They're not without. But I remember I moved to London, England early on for 2 years to go over there because the Beatles had my mother had cut out an article saying the Beatles were they had a new company called Apple and they were looking for songwriters. So in 1971, I went over there with my guitar and I went up to Apple offices on Savile Row and I knocked on the front door and I said, "Excuse me, sir, I'd like to play my songs for someone." And it was the security guard guy. And he said, "Well, no, son, it doesn't work that way. You have to go through the." So I was rejected and turned away. And but I stayed for a couple of more years because I loved it there. And I worked in this little shop in Soho, a little clothing shop called the Westerner. It's the only kind of 9 to 5 job I've ever had. And we used to get a lot of rock stars coming in there because we sold, Wrangler denim shirts from America and whatnot. And Keith Moon came into the store one day. This white Rolls Royce pulled up outside. This driver named Dougal. And Keith Moon came in. He said, "If you lock the door, don't let anybody in. I'll spend more money in here today than you'll make all week." So I locked the door, and he sent Dougal to get a 6 pack of beer. And I was in there. And Keith Moon, one of the things he said to me is, we talked about when the getting into the Who and then the Who playing in Chicago on their first American tour, and he realized then and there, and he said, if the fans are paying $5 for a ticket, I'm going to get behind that drum kit and give them a $15 show. And I adopted that. So whenever I'm doing something commercially for money or as commerce, music, to me, there's two separate things. There's music and there's music business. So whenever I go out to do a show, whether it's a small show or a little, whatever it is, I always make sure for me, for my bit in it, I give, you know, 3 times the amount of what I think, like I give them everything I got and then some every single time. And I've never ever tried to do anything less. So, just you can just work that hard when you're first practicing. Work as if people are going to be paying money to see you perform, and then work 3 times as hard as that. Just roll up your sleeves and work and do your repetitions on the guitar, whatever instrument you're doing. Do all the mundane stuff until you know it inside and out. You know, and then another lesson that I learned was from Greg Allman. And I was with these two guys, Reggie McBride, a bass player, and Dallas Taylor, chumming around when I first moved to LA in 1975. And we were going to back up, quote unquote, Greg Allman. And so we had a rehearsal studio at SIR. And we rehearsed, but Greg didn't show up Monday night or Tuesday night or Wednesday night or Thursday night, or I think finally Friday night he showed up for a rehearsal. And he had inherited Dwayne's, I think, all his guitars, and so he was playing his guitar tech had an old it's called a Fender Nocaster set up, and I just admired it so. But anyway, Greg comes in late, but we're ready to go. We'll just start playing some of his songs, and I wanted to impress him. Okay, I'm like, what am I? I'm like 21 years old. I want to impress him, so I'm just with my 60 Les Paul, my little Fender amp, and I'm just blowing, just like that. And he walked over to me. We just started the jam, and he walked over to me and whispered into my ear, and he said, "Brah, don't you think you should learn the song first?" And I was just humiliated and devastated and that was a lesson that I had to learn. So know your material when you're going to do a performance. Never have any doubt about your end of it. Never have any doubt about what you're going to play and what you're going to sing, because that then will give you the freedom to go up. And if you engage in some ad lib and some freestyle and free form expression, because it's called performance art at the end, you're doing a performance. Then you have the freedom to do that as long as you have your foundation and your structure in place, but know it inside out. And I learned that was a tough lesson for me to learn because it embarrassed me. I never got the gig with them. I was the last time I ever jammed with them. That was it. I didn't, you know, and because I just wanted to show off what I could do and not be a part, and that's when I learned it's about the ensemble. Unless you're performing alone, it's the ensemble. So strap on your bunny ears and listen to the people around you and to respond accordingly.
Definitely words of wisdom spoken from somebody who clearly knows. And I gotta say, I think I like your Keith Moon story better than my Muddy Water story.
Because it includes a little bit of pain, a little bit of humiliation, but a lot of growth. I took that to heart, man.
And what a surprise that Keith Moon takes a six pack of beer with him clothes shopping. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. No, no, Dougal. Yeah, that was a great day, man. He came in wearing this three-piece satin, silver satin. He had been in. We were on in Soho on this old. I think it was called Old Compton Street, and right around the corner on Woodrow Street was the Who's head office. So he wanted to change into some casual clothes. And he bought a lot of stuff. He bought a couple of Wrangler shirts and jeans and the Spanish boots. It was a tiny little shop we had, like not big at all, but it sold really cool stuff. A lot of Spanish boots and like I said, those denim Wrangler shirts from America, which were hard to get in London at that time. And John Entwistle used to come in there too to buy our shirts. But that was a great day with Keith Moon, and I'll never forget it. And I was thinking, God, I wish my friends could see me now. Like no one would believe this, you
right.
know. But anyway, yeah, those you learn those things. It's those are the things that you can't sign up in a classroom for that. You can't sign up somewhere. Um,
That's just happenstance. Jamie, it's been an absolute joy. Thank you for sharing your insights on music as a mindset, as well as a performing art and a business. Um, to our master radio listeners, thank you for tuning in, supporting artists like Jamie. Be sure to listen to Straight Up, his solo album that is at streaming outlets, and we're playing it as well. Jamie, any plans for a tour or any place going somewhere where people might see you?
No, there's no plans as of yet, I'm kind of chomping at the bit now to want to get out and play. But it's been a slow, steady process of rebuilding my strength and stamina from my surgery. Even though it's 5 years ago, it's a process to start feeling totally confident of what you can do as far as breathing and stamina and stuff. I've only really done one show since then, and so, but yeah, if anything happens though, Adam, I'll get a hold of you and let you know because I think what you're doing is fantastic, and thank you for this platform that you're giving old septuagenarians like myself. Oh,
And Billy Vera is a dear friend and was the subject of an interview. He's got some years on you.
yeah, 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 yeah. He's wonderful,
Took him a while to get
wonderful.
back out of the road after COVID as well, but he did. I think he just did a show not too long ago. But yeah, we got a lot of folks like you. Don't worry about that.
Thank you.
Have you be? So, all right, it has been a pleasure, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam.